Is it that every time you sit down to write your dissertation, you just stop and stare at the computer, wishing that it would tell you what to do, as if you sitting there trying to have to figure it out? And at this point, have you gotten so frustrated by knowing that you need to write, but not sure where to start? If so, this video is for you. On this episode of From ABD to PhD show, I'm going to share 4 strategies that you can implement to overcome of being unsure of where to start with your dissertation. And for those just tuning in and have watched the show before, my name is Dr. Ramon Goings, founder of Done Dissertation. And our goal at Done Dissertation is to help you write and defend your dissertation within 1 year or less. And this episode of From ABD to PhD show is sponsored by the Done Dissertation Velocity Coaching Program. Our whole goal is to help you write and defend your dissertation within 1 year. So if you're a doctoral student looking for that support, needing that hands-on dissertation coaching, you can scan a QR code here or go to www.velocitydissertation.com to learn more about our program. But for today's episode, I want to talk about something that often stumbles a lot of students, especially when we're going into a new semester. It's essentially like, how do I write my dissertation when I don't know where to begin? And look, I've been there. I understand what happens completely. So I want to give you some strategies. So first things first, when we think about what's happening and think about this journey, what the process might look like, the first thing we have to consider is that you first have to recognize where or if you are lacking information. So this is something that you might not be thinking about, but it's important to recognize, is it an information gap that you have, or is there something else happening? And what I would say for a lot of students, when you're going through this process, you have to recognize that if you're not sure where to begin, it could be usually one or two things. Is it a situation where you lack information about what to do? So literally, you don't know the technical aspects of how to write it or what to write or what should go in each section. That's kind of an information gap. The second gap you might have is a confidence gap. So how that shows up in your work is that you're just wondering if by you doing all this work with maybe not a lack of, a limited amount of feedback from your faculty, you're not quite sure if what you're going to do is actually going to be helpful. And even worse, you are scared of getting to a point that you do all this work, you write these chapters, you submit it to your chair because they only want to see it at the end. And they say, I don't like any of this, scrap it. Let's start back from the beginning. If that's been your experience or something that you might be afraid of, let me know in the comments. It's not uncommon, but we know that this sometimes it can be a challenge. So when you're thinking about where do you start, if you're not sure where to begin with your dissertation, first things first, to recognize which camp do you fall in. It could be both, but recognize you have an information gap. If you have an information gap, now it's time to think about who are the people or where are the places that I can get that information in order to close that information gap. So a lot of times where you will get that information from will be from your dissertation chair, maybe a committee member, someone at your university. If you have an information gap, it could be something more broadly dissertation related. So if so, look at some of our past videos on our Done Dissertation YouTube channel. It might be an information gap around a certain aspect of the process. And if it's on writing, you definitely need to schedule a meeting with your dissertation chair to ask questions. Because while your chair is going to maybe push you to be independent and do all these things, at times you need to come back to them to ask clarifying questions. And it makes no sense to be stuck if you have an information gap, because there's someone or somewhere that you can go to get that information. So that's important there. But if you have a confidence gap, here's what I want you to recognize is that your work will never be perfect. So don't even strive for that. Because a lot of times what we're concerned about when it's maybe a confidence gap is like this idea that your work won't be good enough or it's going to get kicked back and all these things. Just know that there will be a iterative process to getting feedback on your work. And part of the doctoral journey is to get that support to navigate those things. And so this is something that in my book, 14 Secrets to a Done Dissertation, sorry, a little bright on the camera, that I talk about because I think it's really important for us to consider how to navigate the committee politics and how to respond to feedback. And in particular, in the book, I have a chapter dedicated to what we call the 80% rule. And so your goal as a doctoral student is to get your work to 80% satisfactory, get it to your chair and committee, and allow them to help you push it the rest of the way. So a lot of times that confidence gap that might be there is just solely from you not being sure where to go in the journey. So with that, if anything resonates with you, let me know in the comments. And for those who are watching, if you haven't yet, if you can hit the like and subscribe button on our YouTube channel, we recognize that almost like 90% or a little bit over 90% of folks who watch our videos have not subscribed to the channel. So if you can hit the subscribe button and notification bell, that would be amazing. So again, just to reiterate, our first strategy that we have to think about implementing is making sure that you recognize where or if you are lacking information. The next thing that you have to consider is thinking through whether or not that you have actually set reasonable expectations. Here's what we know from working with so many students like yourself. A lot of times we've gone into this process and we have unrealistic expectations for how this thing should go. And so what ends up happening is that you become so frustrated with the process. But when I ask students, well, what's your expectations? And they start to tell me a lot. It starts to tell me a lot about why you might be stuck and not sure where to start. Because I hear a lot of students, you might fall into this camp. I might say, all right, what's your goal? What's your expectation for, upcoming month or two? You might say, oh, by the end of the month, I'm going to finish chapter 1. I'm like, cool. That's an expectation. But one, is that reasonable? Because you kind of got to keep a cadence of how fast or slow do you write and do you need to read? So you got to take these things into account. I know for our clients at Dissertation, we try to average our clients finishing a chapter per month. So in a 31 day time period, we want folks to have a chapter completed. Particularly at the proposal phase, that's where things can, progress rather quickly. And on the back end, especially if you are, we just had a doctoral student, shout out to Dr. Washington, who just finished, and she literally wrote her last 2 chapters of her dissertation in 3 weeks in order to defend by the deadline. That stuff can happen for you, right? But it's just being mindful of recognizing that I have to set expectations and then from there backwards map those expectations. So what I want you to start thinking about, your goals not to be, your expectation is not necessarily to write and do the chapter, which is the output, the end result. We have some other outputs that we can do. So maybe your goal is to, hey, I'm going to write this section of my literature review by this date. Then I'm going to write this section by this date. What you do there is that you start to get in a habit of setting smaller expectations for yourself and smaller deadlines that you can meet. You're able to check off the box, and then from there, you're able to build and progress. And you'd be surprised if we took like a literature review, for example. Let's say literature review is 30 pages. Let's say you got 6 sections you need to write in your literature review. Or maybe let's say 8. You got an intro, conclusion, and 6 like meaty sections in terms of the content. What you might then set is like, hey, each of these content areas, sections, I'm going to focus on for, 3 or 4 days at a time. So you just continuously knock them out. And then before you know it, you can write a whole chapter within a month quite easily, but it's you knocking them out. But what a lot of folks do is just set this lofty goal of the whole chapter, and it can become overwhelming. Or even worse, I see people say, oh, my goal by X date is to finish my proposal. And I'm like, whew, that is tough. And I ask, well, how are you going to do that? And they're like, oh, I'm just going to write. That's not enough. You haven't set a realistic expectation. What will end up happening is that you will get frustrated and you will determine that, oh, I'm not doing well and I'm not gonna be able to experience the success. And so I don't want that for you. And so if you've been in that boat, just let me know in the comments. And if you're someone at this point, you might need even hands-on support and you want to get your dissertation done and you want that immediate support, immediate feedback, we invite you to apply to work with us in our Velocity coaching program with our goal to help catapult and push you to finishing your dissertation with support. So if you need that support, please feel free to reach out to us at www.velocitydissertation.com. You can fill out our consultation form there, or you can scan the QR code here on your screen and take you there as well. So, when we've talked about, setting, reasonable expectations, the next thing I want us to consider then is also in strategy number 3 is that you have to create a plan of attack. Look, a lot of us go through this process and we set these goals, as I mentioned previously, but then, even if we come up with, better goals for ourselves, we don't create the plan. And so for many folks, it's just like, I'm going to write, but no, you have to have a plan of attack. Without a plan of attack, your efforts will be for naught. It just will be frustrating and you won't know where you're going with this thing. And so you have to have a plan. What a plan could look like initially might be to, if you're at the proposal phase, hey, maybe outline the 3 chapters that you have to write. So maybe have a document with each chapter and just headers, right, of the things that need to go in these chapters. Like some of these chapters are very formulaic depending on your field. So a lot of this is already kind of set up for you. So for instance, my folks that might be in the social sciences, in a lot of chapter ones or introduction chapters, you may have a background of the problem. You're gonna have maybe a statement of the problem section, a purpose of the study, a research questions section, some type of theoretical conceptual framework section, a significance of your study section, maybe terms and definitions, maybe limitations, delimitations, that type of stuff, and then a conclusion. These sections are going to be in there. So why not create a plan and have a document with this mapped out, and then you literally backwards the dates of when you're going to have things due. Having this plan will be so much easier, because then what you can do is that you can assign dates to certain sections, and then you build it up, and it just now becomes, hey, if I want chapters 1, 2, and 3 done by December, I want a backwards match. So starting in August, I'm going to be working on chapter 1, section, this section, this section, next section. I probably have that done by September. And you just map it out, and you'd be surprised how fast you can finish. But a lot of folks aren't willing to put the plan in place because either they don't know where to go. But remember, we talked about that. You might have an information gap. So you got to fill that information in, or just recognize like, I might do all this work and it still might not be right, where the confidence might be lacking. So, and there's nothing wrong with that. I went through the same thing. Trust me. Like in my whole program, like when I was a doc student, my professors used to call up my work. It was frustrating, but it came to a point where I had to take more ownership and like figuring this thing out and getting some support and feedback. And those things going back and forth really helped me develop in terms of my own work. And so that's something I want you all to consider. But at this point in time, most of you all don't have a plan of attack, and without having a plan, the process goes nowhere. And this is why at Done Dissertation, we created a training for you. It's called Design Your Done Dissertation. If you want to learn more about it, you can scan the QR code here, or you can go to www.designyourdissertation.com. And we created this training because we know some folks are not sure of how to create the plan. And so what we do in this training is walk you step by step through how to create a dissertation completion plan. It comes with a workbook that actually has the plan in it. So you just essentially fill it out, and you're able to create a plan that you can then bring to your chair for feedback, and it starts the conversation. But you have to have some type of structure and plan in place in order to finish this process, especially if you don't know where to begin. The plan is going to be critical. And again, if anything is resonating with you, please let us know, because we always want to hear from folks about what things you're taking away, what might resonate, what things you're still thinking about and thinking through. Then once we get our plan of attack, our next strategy that you can employ is going to be what I call get an easy win first. Look, I'm always trying to get the easy wins. It's very difficult when you're trying to write these dissertations or do anything to do something that is frustrating to you first. It just is. And I've learned over time, and maybe this is my own defense mechanism, I've started to do things that come quick first, and then I go from there. So for instance, right now, I'm currently finishing up my next book that's getting ready to come out for dissertation chairs. So I've been working with you all as students, but we're also going to be working with your dissertation chairs and faculty, because I think it's a lot that can happen there. And so I'm in the editing component of the writing process for that book. It is extremely frustrating. I have a full draft, but now I'm going back through and editing. I'm on right now, at the time of this recording, I'm on chapter 5 of about 8. I think I have 9 chapters. It's just frustrating going through. But what I recognize is that I can't just say I'm going to edit this chapter. I got to edit a section. And I found that as I edit sections, that's been my easy win to check off. And so for you with your writing, that might be the route that you have to start going. Figuring out which chapter is the easiest to write first, which section in that chapter is the easiest to write, and then attacking that one first. And then from there, building out the next one, and then the next one, and to a point where you get to the more difficult ones. But what I found out is that when you get easy wins early, it makes doing the difficult work easy later. And so be mindful of this. And what you're going to do is get those easy wins. And because it always makes showing up for yourself the next day easy. Because imagine you had a great writing session. Most likely when you come back to your computer tomorrow, your first thought is, I'm going to have another great writing session like yesterday, or let me recreate that. And so those positive thoughts really trickle down into your process. And once they hit you, you'd be surprised about how fast you finish things. But this is important, something that you have to be able and willing to put in the effort to do so. And again, to recap, We've talked about a number of things. We talked about getting an easy win, building out, of course, your plan of attack. We talked about setting reasonable expectations, and we talk about recognizing where or if you are lacking information, right? And so when these things kind of work together, what I want you all to consider is one other component, and I consider this a bonus, but something I want you all to consider is that for many of you all, you might have gone through this process and have not experienced success. And I would say one of the things that you can do when you don't know where to get started is get help if you've been stuck. Again, it does not make a lot of sense for you to be sitting stuck in this process when there are resources available. Of course, at Done Dissertation, we help doctoral students write and defend a dissertation. So we are definitely a resource for you. But hey, even if you decide not to work with us, which is cool, you just want to consume the content that's helping you, find somebody. It doesn't make any sense, because what's literally happening is you're just throwing money away that you, not even money, but opportunity cost and then time, because you've just been stuck. And when you don't know where to begin, sometimes getting in front of someone who can help you get unstuck. We recently did a workshop with one of our partners, Cohort Sisters, and we talked about this during the workshop. And it was something that came up a lot. And it was just like, look, there's no need to spin around in circles if you can get some support to get out of the program. And so if you've come to that point and you're, knowing that, hey, I've tried my route, it hasn't worked, I may need some more, hands-on support to get unstuck, then I would invite you to apply to work with us in our Velocity coaching program. It's a great community of like-minded scholars who are looking to get their dissertations done and are looking to put the time in to do it, looking to put their resources in to do it, and just looking forward to all that awaits them after they're done. And so if that's something that you're interested in, you can scan the QR code that is here on your screen, or you can visit www.velocitydissertation.com. Again, we want to support you all finishing this process. It's no need, I don't want you watching this video in a year from now, wishing that you would have gotten help, or even worse, being stuck in the same spot. It just is heartbreaking when we see folks who come to work with us after being stuck for 2 years, 3 years, when you could have gotten help. We want people to finish. We don't want you all, celebrating that ABD status. We want you all to get done. And so if you're looking forward to getting done and you need that support, go ahead and tap in with us. You can apply to work with us at www.velocitydissertation.com. And if you're watching this, if you can, in the comments, drop the link in. Just so other folks coming behind you can grab the link as well. Again, it's www.velocitydissertation.com. And we're looking forward to working with you all. I'm so excited about what is to come for you in your dissertation journey. But just remember, if you don't know where to begin, check out, make sure you find the right information. Get the support where you need. Don't sit stuck when you can have someone help you create a plan and then you execute. But again, I want you to make sure if you don't know where to begin, the worst thing you can do is just not do anything. So I would love to hear from you in the comments. I'll come back around and check with you after the recording. We're done. But I would love to hear from you. What is one thing or one action that you're willing to put in that will get you one step closer to finishing your dissertation? And with that, I want to say thank you so much for watching this episode of From ABD to PhD show. My name is Dr. Ramon Goings. I'm the host of the show and founder of Done Dissertation. And I'm looking forward to working with you all soon to get these dissertations done. And until next time, I wish you all a happy week and a happy dissertation. Take care.